When you got here to LA,
Okay.
what happened in the first year or so, or how did you kind of get your feet wet, and what did you do?
So I got here during the writer's strike, which meant that everybody was out of a job. So I actually had more meetings with bigger people than you could ever imagine because they weren't working. And so I met with, big time production designers. That's what I came out here to do, since that was my degree. I thought, oh, well, I'll production design for a while, so I'm going to try to assist one. So I met all these people. They're like, well, your work looks all right. I might hire you, but I don't have a job. The first 8 months of being out here, I had no money. And so actually my buddy David, who was my roommate at the time, and I decided to start doing web design. He's a programmer and I'm a designer, and so we decided, why don't we team up and start a little web design company.
So that's interesting to me, because it's sort of under the question of, well, how does an artist survive, right? It's not just eating ramen noodles every day, right? Some of the people that we're talking to here are living in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, or wherever, and they're thinking to themselves, should I move to New York to follow, or should I go to LA? What's your kind of thinking on that sort of thing?
I think there's a lot of people that struggle with that, but there's no way to not go to LA in my mind. You got to go where the action is. If you don't, then you're just kidding around.
It's better to go kind of where people are, because you make friends. I mean, you guys can't see behind the cameras, but there's like 6 people in here, and they're all Jeff's mates that are working on Camp Abercorn and are your friends, and I'm sure that you guys network and have all kinds of connections between you, right? I mean,
yeah, and we all work on each other's projects, and so it's,
Yeah, tell me a little bit about how that works for you guys now.
Well, a lot of us are aspiring filmmakers, so somebody will write something and they'll say, hey, you're my buddy, will you come help me film this for little to no money for a while, and in return I'll help you on your next one. The big film schools are all here, so USC and AFI and UCLA. You sort of meet people starting at the grad school or undergrad student level, and then those people work up to doing short films, to doing other things, and then somebody will need a PA on a bigger project and they'll hire you. That's how I met Oliver and got to work on a production assistant. I think if you're just sitting in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, then you don't know if you actually like making films or not, even if they're your favorite thing ever. I think the process of making a film is very different than wanting to make films, I guess.
Yeah, it's really sort of was the same back in my day too.
Yeah.
And the other thing, of course, is that like if someone is thinking of hiring somebody for a project and they're living someplace else, so they'd have to fly in or something.
So much happens last minute. It's like, oh, well, we got this idea to do this other thing. We need some more people. I'm going to call my friends who I know live here, who are available now.
You get phone calls, I'm sure, where people say, we're shooting this weekend. Can you come out to Simi Valley, 6 hours from now, right? And
yeah. Well, one of our cast members, Declan, we actually had to cast super last minute because the guy who we had playing Colin was like, listen, I got this gig doing this NBC show. I found out just now I can't be in your project anymore. And so we cast him like 3 days before we were supposed to start filming.
So let's cut ahead now.
Okay.
You've arrived in LA and you've having various day jobs, you've met people, you've made friends. Now between that and when Camp Abercorn first started, what was going on?
I had been progressing in the art department world. I assisted this guy, Jimmy Como, who's a Pee-wee's Playhouse production designer. He was really great, and I worked for him for 3 or 4 years, and then moved on to working for Oliver. And Oliver Scholl is his name. He's the production designer for Edge of Tomorrow, and he did Independence Day. He's like a big-time science fiction guru. And for me, that was like, oh, well, here's an amazing production designer. I'm getting to work with him every day. I'm learning about what I could be doing in 15 years from now if I keep at this.
It's kind of was similar for me in the sense of there's work that you do by yourself when you're in a room or you're just with your own people, but then there's when you're working for other people who are mentors to you, and you really get a view into how the big guys do it. And that, I know for me, that was very helpful when I would see that. And was that for you, that whole Edge of Tomorrow experience? And
yeah, what was different about Edge of Tomorrow, and for me than other projects, was that I started out in development of it. So Tom Cruise hadn't signed on board yet. It was just Doug Liman, the director, Oliver, some illustrators, and and me, basically.
So you got to see how it happened.
So
from
I
like
saw it for
ground
6
up, huh?
months. It was like, it was us putting together pitches for Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt and Warner Brothers. I, got to work with Doug a lot and saw what he was doing and thought, that's more interesting.
At this point now, Jeff, are you starting to kind of really think, well, I really want to be directing?
I knew that I wanted to write a project and direct a project of my own. And when I was in London, every night after working 16-hour days, I would come home and write a little something and then write a little something. And Engraved Productions, my production company, I founded in 2006 when I was in college, so 8 years ago. And I knew that I wanted to produce my own films eventually. I didn't know if it would happen or how it was going to happen, but that's sort of always been part of the plan. I'm kind of equally interested in business as I am in the creative side of it. And film is sort of the ultimate art form in that sense, where you need to have a good business because it takes a lot of money to make a film, but it's also music and visuals and storytelling and all of the creative side that I'm interested in too.
Take me home to Camp Abercorn.
There's so many screenplays in Los Angeles that never get made. Honestly figured if I wrote something, it would never happen. And plus we can distribute it online for basically free.
So this is a whole different world from my ear.
Yeah.